Hello and welcome to our show. I'm Chris Ferrara, the host of this special on Fatima TV, Habemus Papam. And as always during this jaunt in Rome, our sojourn here in the Holy City, the Eternal City, Father Nicholas Gruner, founder of the Fatima Center. Welcome, Father.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
So, but what are your impressions as the aftermath of this papal election sinks in? What do you think of this new Pope?
Well, it has a lot of hope for a lot of people. I think that he was unexpected. If we listened to the conversation before, his name was never mentioned. Although he was the runner-up in 2005, it's surprising his name was never mentioned. I think it's because of his humility. He sort of downplays everything that people don't talk about him. And so it's a surprise, certainly, but a welcome surprise. Certainly an outside cardinal, for the simple reason that the Vatican leaks and the investigation into the Vatican Curia by the three cardinals named by Benedict shows that, and since they couldn't read it, from what I understand, they had to choose somebody outside the Curia to be sure not to have somebody who's involved in the scandals in the Vatican.
Interesting. And that would ensure, of course, that it doesn't get buried.
Well,
but you had the impression, last time around in 2005, the impression you told me of being disappointed when you heard that Bergoglio was the runner-up and was not chosen as Pope.
Yes, I heard that Cardinal Bergoglio, as we know today, I mean, even now as Pope, he's very devoted to Our Lady. One of the first acts he did after being elected and his expected blessing from the loggia in front of the St. Peter's was to go to St. Mary Major the following morning. He gave them apparently very little notice, and he wanted to go there to pay his respect and honor to the Blessed Virgin. He left a bouquet of flowers there, and he prayed before the image of Our Lady painted by St. Luke, which is titled the health or the protection of the Roman people.
Apparently you had the impression even back in 2005 that this was a Pope who would be sympathetic to the whole Fatima event.
Well, in fact, he's written to our office more than once. As you know, we write to the bishops and cardinals, for that matter, once a month. And we've been doing that for many years now. And occasionally we miss a month, but we get there quite frequently. We sent over 200 letters to them in the past 10 years or 20 years, whatever it is now. And he's written back to us several times. So, and he's
that's a hopeful sign.
And he's told us that, for example, that in his diocese there are 2 parishes dedicated to Our Lady of Fatima, and that in this diocese the practice of the 5 First Saturdays. Now, many bishops and cardinals, for that matter, don't even know the 5 First Saturdays or the First Saturday devotion, communions of reparation of the Immaculate Heart. He obviously knows about it. He could write to us about it and says it's being practiced. I'm sure it should be practiced more everywhere, but it certainly is a good start that this cardinal is having it practiced, and he's positively speaking about it, which is a great thing.
Well, so now we have a new Holy Father, and the term Holy Father is, for some people, not well understood. In fact, the whole concept of holiness is not well understood these days. There's a confusion between the natural and the supernatural, and people think holy means simply somebody who's well-liked or popular and has a certain aura of, I don't know, specialness about him. But we have a service, as they say in Italian, or a bit of an introduction to the concept by John Vanari in St. Peter's Square. And for once, he didn't have to use an umbrella. He wasn't being battered by hailstones or dodging thunderbolts. So let's go to St. Peter's and listen to John on the subject of holiness.
5, 4, 3. Thank you, Chris. We're here at the Vatican, the second day under the reign of the new Pope, Pope Francis. We call the Pope Holy Father, and I think it pays at this time to step back and take a look at the word holy within context of Holy Father, because it's a word that is very much misunderstood. In fact, if you went up to 10 different denominations, members of 10 different denominations, and I would say even at this point in time in the church, if you went up to 10 different Catholic priests and you asked them each for a definition of holiness, each of them would probably give you a different answer from the other, and chances are none of them would be right. But thankfully we have the writings of one of the greatest mystical writers and writers of the spiritual life in the 20th century, Blessed Abbot Marmion, great Benedictine abbot, who wrote about this very thing based on the teaching of St. Thomas Aquinas. Holiness consists of a double element. It has a negative element and a positive element. The negative element is, and this is what we see in God, I have to first say, we have to start with the holiness in God. That in God, the holiness is an infinite distance from all that is sin, from all that is imperfect, from all that is impure. He is infinitely free from every spot or stain or shadow of imperfection. That's the negative aspect. But the positive aspect is that God adheres by an always present act of his will to the infinite goodness which is himself, in order to conform himself entirely to all that that infinite good is. Okay? Now, once we know what that model of holiness is, we see that it is one model. That's what we see in our Lord Jesus Christ. He was infinitely free from every spot or stain or shadow of incorruption, and he always adhered by an always present act of his will to the infinite good which was himself. It's the same model of holiness we see for our Blessed Mother. She was without stain of sin. She was born without original sin. She was free from every spot, stain, or shadow of incorruption, and she always adhered by an act of her will to the infinite good which is God, in order to conform herself to all that that infinite good is. So now we have a better idea of what we see with Holy Father, that the Holy Father himself must teach a doctrine that is free from every spot, stain, or shadow of incorruption, of corruption rather, be free from all error, confusion, and ambiguity, and he must also teach a doctrine that adheres to the infinite good which is God himself, to the true and genuine Catholic doctrine throughout the centuries. So this is what holiness is. This is the Holy Father's duty, and as Our Lady of Fatima says, as the Fatima message says, we must pray a great deal for the Holy Father, pray a great deal for Pope Francis. For Fatima Network, I'm John Veneri.
Thank you, John. Those prayers will be especially important because there's a Stygian stable that has to be cleaned out by the new Pope.
Yes.
As indicated in the 300-page dossier of the VatiLeaks investigation, which was so explosive that retiring Pope Benedict said, well, no, I'm leaving this to my successor. No one else will be reading this before him.
It was 300 pages that was prepared by 3 cardinals. All these cardinals are over 80. They could not vote in the conclave, but and Pope Benedict met with these 3 cardinals the day before his resignation took effect, and so this was in fact talked about in the press here, the daily and weekly press in Rome, and no doubt other parts of the world as well. I remember reading one article in a weekly magazine talking about that there's a network of sinning clergymen who are part of the problem of the corruption in the sinning in a way that is unmentionable, according to St. Paul, in a way that is unnatural. And this, they say, is the basis. They reconstructed this. What exactly is in the report? There's only one copy, but obviously there's a problem in the Vatican, and a big problem.
300 pages worth, and that's probably just a summary of what's going on. So we need someone from the outside, from a context that doesn't involve habitual association with members of the Curia, someone who's willing to start fresh with a whole new array of people. And I think you mentioned it may be the case that he has not yet done the typical automatic reappointment of the existing curial officials until new ones can be selected, that maybe he's going to clean house immediately and have nobody in office.
Well, that's really what I think needs to be done, because I think Pope John Paul II had the intention to clean house, but he made the mistake of reappointing the old ones back again without, first of all, I know that when St. Pius X became Pope, he told Cardinal Merry del Val, he said, I will become Pope if you become my Secretary of State. He recognized that Cardinal Merry del Val was a holy man and that he was capable of doing it, of taking that job. And it was because Cardinal Merry del Val took the Secretary of State that Pope Pius X became the Pope. Because they had sent Merry del Val to talk to Cardinal Sarto to ask him to accept.
That's what we need today. Please God, another Mary Duval and another St. Pius X. Will this Pope develop into such a Pope? We know that he is a man of the people. And in that regard, we have some interesting photos that our media team collected of the new Pope shortly after his election. Let's take a look at those now. Here, of course, is the Pope waving to the crowd from the loggia, St. Peter's Basilica.
And he thanked them. First things he said was, brothers and sisters, good evening.
Good evening, a very simple greeting. Here he is on the bus with the other cardinals.
Yes, he didn't take a special car back. He went with the rest of the cardinals, and there you see from the back a view of the same bus trip with the cardinals. And then the next photo is even more interesting when you see that he goes, well, here, of course, he shows his Marian piety. One of the first things he did the following morning, early in the morning, was to go to St. Mary Major and to pay his homage and respect to the Blessed Virgin and pray before Our Lady. Here he's
paying his hotel bill.
Yes, he came back. Here he is dressed all in white, as he is. The new Pope came back to the place where he stayed before he went to St. Martha and paid his bill.
Yeah, interesting. So this is not a showman Pope. Yeah. And I, for one, regarded that obvious change with a great sense of relief. With all due respect, we don't need another showman. No. We need someone who is going to do something serious about cleaning up the mess of the Vatican, but also...
But it's not just put on for this day. He was, in Argentina, he lived in an apartment. He cooked his own meals and washed his own dishes. I mean, that's something so it's not just something for today or yesterday. And his choice of a name of Francis is, he chose, there's been some confusion, but apparently it's now certain that it was after St. Francis of Assisi that he took his name. And that of course, the great statement there of St. Francis, our Lord spoke to St. Francis in the church in San Damiano, go, Francis, and rebuild, my church is falling down, we go and rebuild it. Of course, Francis misunderstood. He thought he was talking about that physical building that he was in, but really he was talking about the church that is, and Saint Pope at the time saw Francis holding up the church single-handedly, basically, in a dream. So.
Well, there's certainly going to be a need to rebuild, and in his first homily, the new Pope spoke of how the failure to build with the cross of Christ results in the collapse of everything. And he also said something that we haven't heard in a long time in terms of sheer clarity. He who does not believe with Christ believes in the demon. Now, that is a clear distinction between light and darkness and truth and error, the likes of which we haven't heard much of since the Second Vatican Council.
Yes.
Everything is sort of wishy-washy. But distinctions have been lost, but not with this Pope, at least not so far.
Well, in fact, when he spoke against so-called gay marriage, he pointed out that this is not just some small distinction here, but he's talking about a complete deception of the devil, that people could believe such a complete lie and live such a complete lie.
He made repeated references to the devil and the demon, and a Pope who firmly believes in the personal devil who provokes evil in the world is the kind of Pope I think we need in this situation more than ever.
Well, especially, I mean, the church and the world is under attack. I mean, people who are not in the church might think that, well, the devil doesn't concern me, but basically the devil hates all men, not people just who are religious, but hates all men. He wants to kill us all if he could. He wants to send us all to hell, whether we're religious or not. So it's in everyone's interest to be that the church and all of us be on our guard against the wiles and snares of the devil, as St. Pope Leo XIII pointed out, that there is an attack on the church, and we need to ask heavenly help. We need the angels, the guardian angels, especially St. Michael, to protect us from these attacks. Well,
the cardinals seem happy with their choice and relieved that it's over. We saw some film of them going into the conclave. They look like they had the weight of the world on their shoulders, or at least most of them. But we caught up with one of them afterwards, and he seemed to be the picture of relaxation and relief.
Let's
take a look at that video
to our media team.
Yeah.
He's speaking in Italian, of course, and it's not a renewal, it's not a rebirth, he says, but it's a renewal.
rivitalizzarsi, ma c'è una continuità nella novità e mi pare che sia una buona novità.
It's good news. It's news. It's good news. I think it seems good. And the reporter is asking you, you went to the end of the world?
È cattolica, cioè universale, che non c'è un luogo distante.
The church is universal. The church is everywhere,
al centro che è
so.
Cristo. E più ci avviciniamo a Lui, più siamo
And
salvi, più siamo capaci di essere come
the more we're closer to Christ, the more we're be happy, holy.
Per l'eminenza il conclave è stata un'esperienza straordinaria.
Sì, sì. E si vive veramente una dimensione profondamente spirituale, al di là di ogni umana categoria.
Sì.
Adesso devo andare a pranzo.
We see a spiritual dimension in the Cardinal Versali. He had to go now to eat with the Pope. He's having lunch with him.
Oh, they certainly seem pleased with the outcome, and let's hope that the promise that we're seeing now in terms of the simplicity and the Marian devotion of this Pope is fulfilled. I noticed that when he went to the icon, the famous icon Salus Populi Romani, Our Lady under the title of Protectress of the Roman people, he brought with him a bouquet of flowers,
yes, he left it
placed
on the
it at the
altar.
feet of that icon.
Yes.
And this was the first thing he did. It was in the morning after his election, around 8 o'clock in the morning, wasn't
Yes.
it?
And then after that he went, and he certainly prayed there as we saw in the picture, but also left the bouquet. I've seen pictures of it. We didn't catch it for today, but he's obviously showing his love for Our Lady, and he's also, as I say, writing to us. He talks about devotion to Our Lady in his diocese. He's got 2 churches dedicated to Our Lady of Fatima. He helps promote the devotion to the first Saturday devotion, the Immaculate Preparation of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. The fact that he even knows about it is great because some cardinals and priests don't know about it today, and here he is promoting it and practicing it, I presume, and so he's going there to show us how much the first act of his pontificate really is, after the blessing Urbi et Orbi to the city and to the world, is to in fact go to Our Lady and ask her help. And he asked us, of course, to pray for him. As the message of Fatima says, we should pray much for the Holy Father. And definitely, he has a big weight on his shoulders because apart from cleaning up the Vatican, he's got to do the consecration of Russia. And that 7 popes have failed to do so far. And I pray and believe this will be the Pope that does it.
Well, the people in general seem quite happy with the choice. And we caught up with one Irish couple in St. Peter's Square who came to the square by way of New York City.
Yes.
Let's listen to what they had to say.
Well, I think it's good that, it's moved from Europe. I think Argentina are going to bring a fresh perspective to the Vatican. And, we have had a lot of problems, with Catholicism in the last few years. And, maybe this changes for the best. And it's strange, one thing we noticed last night when we were walking up here, the number of young people was just amazing. Running to get up here, and
mostly
even
couples. We noticed couples.
And even
so
our
that's
friends
good.
were saying this last night too. They're the kind of same generation as we are, and they were saying like how it was so noticeable that the majority of the people here last night were very young, and I think that's a good thing. I think the attitude among older people, like we'll say of our generation, was it's kind of more of the same, whereas this year is different. I think there's a good feel about it now.
I'm sorry he's so old. I hoped for younger.
A younger man probably would have been better, at least younger being maybe in his 60s. But, I'm very optimistic now. I think it's a good thing that they've moved to another continent. And let's see where it takes us.
I'm interested in their comment on the predominance of young people in the crowd in St. Peter's Square. In fact, the whole phenomenon surrounding this conclave was, to me, astonishing. In a world that has pronounced the Church irrelevant, the Pope an old man whose moral teaching is antiquated, we saw media coverage unlike any event I've ever witnessed in my career as a Catholic journalist. 5,600 journalists, gigantic stacks of TV cameras, antennae.
5,600 journalists accredited with the Vatican.
Right.
There's still more journalists who didn't get accreditation. So, and he's willing to see these 5,600 journalists tomorrow.
And then the sight of that little loggia, the balcony of St. Peter's, with the curtains drawn, and the notion that the entire world media every nation on the face of the earth, every major network, every radio station, every television station, every newspaper, all focused on that little balcony to see one man come out on the balcony and to be revealed as the next Roman pontiff. All of this from a world that pronounces the church irrelevant. Don't you think that's interesting, Father?
Well, obviously the church is the hope of the world. The problem is that we need to be holier than a lot of people, a lot of priests, and for that matter, a lot of lay people have been. We need someone to lead us in that holiness, and to see this man appealing to some of the very simple virtues that we sometimes forget to practice. You know, first of all, don't lord it over. Be as our Lord said, learn of me because I'm meek and humble of heart. I think that comes across with this new Pope. He's showing that meekness and humble of heart, which is attractive even to the non-virtuous. They can sense that.
There's no question this Pope will be beloved of the people, but there's another question that remains to be answered, and it's at the center of your apostolic work for the past 35 years, the consecration of Russia. The last Pope who left office, Pope Benedict, did so under a kind of cloud because he admitted that as the centenary of the Fatima event approaches, we have yet to see the triumph of the Immaculate Heart.
And the only way that triumph can come about is by the Pope himself, together with the bishops, consecrating, that is, saying a special prayer, dedicating, setting aside the country, the people of Russia, to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Now, people sometimes ask, why Russia? Well, the first answer to that is, of course, it is because Russia has been entrusted to the Immaculate Heart. Russia will be saved by this consecration, but it's God's will that this happened. I can give reasons, you know, certainly there's the aspect of first of all, making reparation for the errors of communism being spread over the world, because people from outside Russia forced this Russian Revolution. It was paid for with gold from the United States. It was ideas coming from England and Germany that brought about, but it's not the only error of Russia. But the big thing is, by consecrating Russia, then this will make this act of reparation for the fight against God that started from there. Not that it didn't really start from there, but it became so public from there. It started from other places, from the secret societies and so forth. But Russia then will become an instrument of blessing for the whole world. It was from Russia that the whole world will be blessed.
Just as it was from Russia that so many problems spewed out over the face of the earth, well, as Our Lady predicted at Fatima.
Well, in fact, our Lord,
because of the communist revolution that happened weeks after the Fatima apparitions.
That's right, but it's not only that. But I remember Sister Lucy saying many times the Blessed Virgin Mary told me and my cousins Jacinta and Francesco that Russia is the instrument of chastisement. That God has chosen Russia to chastise the world for its sins, unless we obtain the conversion of that poor nation. But the only way we can obtain the conversion of that poor nation to the service of God, in a much more dramatic, I'm sure there are good Russian people, but in the whole country needs, just like, I don't think there's any country in the world today that doesn't need conversion. And but God has a plan, first of all, for Russia to convert. That way it will convert the other nations after it. And that's why, and as Lucy said, that Russia is a very well-defined territory. And when we see the conversion of Russia coming about from the Pope and the bishops making this prayer, this consecration, this 5-minute prayer, then the world will see, just like they see this election of the Pope, even more they will see the change that takes place in Russia and the goodness that comes from Russia, all because of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And then they will realize that if Russia got these blessings because of the Blessed Virgin, why can't she give these blessings to me if I ask for myself? And people don't know the importance and necessity of devotion to the Blessed Virgin.
Well, you know, the irony is the people who recognize it first and foremost, the importance of the Fatima message, are the popes themselves. They keep bringing it up, and yet mysteriously, they've yet to fulfill the imperatives of the Fatima message. But there's something I'd like to discuss that I've heard among traditional Catholics, people who call themselves traditionalists, for want of a better term, who are very concerned about the Latin liturgy and restoring the devastated vineyard in terms of a liturgical restoration. When you confront them with the message of Fatima, they become skeptical, as if somehow the faith has become reduced to an exercise in linguistic repair. We need to restore the Latin liturgy, and that will make everything right in the church. But their eyes glaze over when you talk about the consecration of Russia. One of them said to me once, "Oh, well, come on, that's just some sort of Deus ex machina. It's a plot device. No one really believes seriously that this 5-minute prayer could change the whole world."
Well, unfortunately, it shows their lack of faith. For all their profession of faith, really, the fact is, first of all, that, you know, the problem with the message of Fatima is that it may seem to some people too simple, but God chooses the weak in order to confound the strong. These people are perhaps more impressed with their own intelligence, more impressed with their own learning, more impressed with you know, their plan for bringing about the restoration. But I mean, just take it with St. Francis of Assisi. God saw that the church needed to be restored. What did he do? He raises up a man, a poor man, who was apparently insignificant. He's just a beggar, basically, at the beginning. And yet it's this man that God is calling upon to restore the church. So God uses the weak of this world to confound the strong. In this case, we have the plan spelled out for us in the message of Fatima. You know, the liturgy of the church, the Latin liturgy of the church says that she only, tu sola, have overcome. You only have overcome all the heresies of the world. The Blessed Virgin will overcome modernism. She'll overcome the anti-traditionalism. She'll overcome all the errors that we have in the church today. She'll overcome them. But how? We've been told in the message by the consecration of Russia. And not just we've been told to say, well, anyone can have a message. Here we have the miracle of the sun before 70,000 people. God has never worked such a miracle before. 70,000 people, the size of the city of Jerusalem at the time of the crucifixion of Christ, 70,000 people. And when the Pharisees asked for a sign in the heavens, our Lord wouldn't give it to them. But to this generation, the very sign that Christ refused to give to the Pharisees because they were lacking faith, he gave it to our generation, to people at Fatima, to say, this message comes from God, we must pay attention. And it was striking and big enough that it can't be ignored. As you say, the popes themselves keep talking about it, even though they don't bring it. I think one of the problems is, of course, is the secretaries of state. There's a whole series of secretaries of states, Cardinal Bertone, Cardinal Sodano, Cardinal Casaroli, all of them against Fatima. They bow in the direction of Fatima. As your book points out, they're false friends of Fatima, but they pretend to be devoted to Our Lady, but they're really not devoted because they oppose her plan. They oppose God's plan.
Well, they're all gone now. All of these impediments to Fatima in the Roman Curia. And now we're looking at the possibility of real reform in that institution by a pope who isn't one of them, and in fact did not want to be one of them when he was invited to join the Curia. Tell us more about how we can get in touch with your apostolate to educate ourselves about the message of Fatima.
Well, certainly they can call us at our 800 number, 1-800-263-8160. They can get in touch with us on our website, Fatima, Fatima.org, www.fatima.org. They can also get in touch with me on the Facebook page, Fr. Nicholas Gruner, Nicholas space Gruner, Gruner. If they have questions, they can certainly write us there, and we'll get back to them. Maybe not the same day, but we'll get back to them.
Well, I look forward to talking to you further during our sojourn here in Rome. But for now, we're out of time. Thank you for joining us on this Fatima TV special, Habemus Papam. I'm Chris Ferrara for Fatima TV Worldwide.